Welcome to Cheaters Theater. Over 95% of you watch without subscribing. Please like the video, subscribe, and turn on the bell. And tell us, where are you watching from? We'd love to know. Let's begin. I make custom cooking grills for people with more money than sense. Real masterpieces, hand-forged steel, custom finishes built to outlive the owners who simply must have one for their backyard parties. They'll host exactly twice before realizing grilling involves effort. My company, Hayes Custom Forge, has been kicking around for 19 years. Nothing fancy, just blood, sweat, and a lot of profanity behind closed workshop doors. I've got 2 kids. Blake just turned 20 and has somehow managed to outsmart me, which is impressive given the competition wasn't exactly fierce, but still mildly offensive. Then there's Emily, 15, going on 40, and convinced she personally invented sarcasm. I tried explaining there's already a patent holder for that, but she just rolled her eyes and said, "Wow, Dad, you're hilarious." Kids going places, probably detention, but places. Still, both of them are good kids, which is saying something considering the circus we call a family. Megan, my wife, works some corporate marketing gig that pays stupid money for, well, talking lots of professional gossip and lunch meetings where everyone pretends to care about brand synergy while sipping overpriced sparkling water. She's been climbing that corporate ladder for years, shaking hands, fake laughing at bad jokes, and calling it networking. Meanwhile, I come home with metal shavings in my hair and grease on my hands. She once told me I smelled like effort, which might have been a compliment, but I'm still not sure. She used to come home and tell me about her boss strategic vision or some product launch that sounded like Mad Libs for adults. I'd nod, sip my beer, and think, wow, people actually get paid for that. But then she started acting like my world, my shop, my customers, my work was some sideshow, like I was the lowercase husband to her uppercase career. Marriage isn't one of those things that explode overnight. It's more like watching your phone battery drop. 98%, then 75%, then 32%, and suddenly you're on 1% praying it lasts till you find a charger. Except nobody tells you where the charger went. First came the separate bedrooms because of my snoring. She said it was for her sanity, but I started to wonder if my sanity should get a vote, too. Then came her working late, 4 nights a week, which sure, maybe the office got really productive after 8 p.m. And don't even get me started on the weekend girls' trips that started as a twice-a-year thing and somehow turned into a quarterly subscription service. Our intimate life declined like a bad stock. Regular, then occasional, then endangered. Finally, practically extinct. I'm not stupid, I noticed. But I kept telling myself it was normal. Marriage evolves, right? That's what people say when they're trying to justify slow-motion disaster. People get comfortable, they say. Translation, you stop pretending you like each other's hobbies. And suddenly, her Pilates class sounds more appealing than dinner at home. She's stressed with work and busy with the forge. Yeah, all the comforting excuses people feed themselves when they know the engine's smoking, but decide, maybe ITLL fix itself. Spoiler, it never does. Then there was her sister Tracy, an absolute piece of work. Divorced twice by 41 and acting like it made her a pioneer of female independence. You know the type. Every family dinner was a TED Talk titled Men Are Trash, a memoir. She'd plop herself down with a glass of wine and say things like, "Megan, you deserve more. Life's too short to settle." I'd be across the table cutting my steak thinking, too short? You've been single for a decade. It's not that short. But Tracy had influence. Oh, she was subtle, a master manipulator wrapped in designer cardigans. She'd lean in during dessert, voice soft and brave, and say, "You're such a powerhouse, Megan. You shouldn't dim your light for anyone." And Megan would nod like Moses just came down from the mountain with new commandments. Thou shalt not stay married to a guy who works with his hands. Before long, my wife started parroting the same recycled self-help slogans. "I've outgrown this relationship," she said one night while scrolling her phone. I looked up from my sandwich and said, "Outgrown it? It's not a pair of jeans." That didn't go over well. She tossed me a look that said I just quoted the wrong philosopher. Me. About 4 months ago, things started really shifting. She began dressing differently. Not your average work outfit. This was hunting attire. Expensive heels sharp enough to puncture tires. Perfume so strong it could knock out a raccoon. And a smile she didn't wear for me anymore. I'd pass by her checking her phone, see that grin, and by the time I looked again, bam, lock screen. I wasn't born yesterday. I just acted like it. Still, I told myself, she's my wife. 23 years in, we've earned some trust. Classic trust. The shiny word we use right before the train derails. Then came the comments. Oh, the passive-aggressive poetry of it all. Must be nice working with your hands all day, she said one evening. So relaxing. No real stress. I almost offered to hand her the welding torch to see how stress-free it felt. Another time, she sighed dramatically, looked at one of my grills, and said, some people have real careers, Aaron. Real careers like marketing made-up words for companies that sell bottled tap water. And the grand finale, my favorite performance to date, family dinner. Everyone's eating. Megan's glowing from whatever new fragrance she was wearing. And Travis got that smug cat that ate the canary look. Out of nowhere, Megan goes, Aaron's business is cute. You know, like a hobby that pays bills. Tracy laughed. Megan smirked. I sat there chewing on my pot roast and planning my permanent exit strategy from family gatherings. Then she started talking about Brandon. Casual little mentions at first, like a name she was trying to sneak into my subconscious. Brandon suggested this. Brandon thinks we should pivot our approach. Brandon's such an innovative thinker. Yeah, Brandon this. Brandon that. The guy's name started haunting my house like a poltergeist with a LinkedIn profile. At first, I figured he was just some coworker with too much hair gel and an overpriced watch. Every company has one, the smooth-talking, idea-spewing guy who calls meetings strategy huddles. But soon it felt like Brandon had more presence in our marriage than I did. I swear if she'd set a place for him at dinner, I wouldn't have blinked. Then came the night the wheels started coming loose. 3 weeks before everything blew up, Megan came home from a work dinner. Midnight. Claimed it was mandatory networking because apparently corporate success happens right around dessert and bad life decisions. She walked in looking like a romantic comedy cliché. Lipstick slightly smudged, cheeks flushed, hair a little too tousled. I asked, have fun. She froze. Why would you ask that? She said, tone icy. I shrugged. Because it's midnight and you look like you just sprinted home from a perfume commercial. That's when the defensive fireworks went off. You think I can't have a work dinner without being interrogated? Maybe try trusting me for once, Aaron. There it was. The classic cheater's playbook. Chapter 1. Gaslight and deflect. Make the suspicious one feel like the lunatic for noticing the obvious. I should have said something. Called her out. Asked who Brandon was besides innovative. But I didn't. Maybe I was scared she'd confirm what I already knew. Maybe I was just too tired to deal with the avalanche. Or maybe, yeah, I was too stupid. Call it whatever you want. I called it peacekeeping. Other people might call it denial. Same thing, really. Then a few weeks back, she dropped the bomb. Told me, not asked, told me I had to come to her company party. She said it was important for her career that I'd be there. Her boss apparently specifically wanted to meet me. I blinked. Why now? You haven't wanted me anywhere near these people in 6 years. She gave me that look, the kind that could kill a small animal. Because it's important to me, she said. You're my husband. Unless, of course, you don't care about supporting my career. Ah yes, emotional blackmail, the spice of married life. I paused, smiled the fake smile of a man who senses danger but walks into it anyway, and said, all right, they'll be there. The party was at the Harrington Grand Hotel downtown. Fancy place, the kind where the napkins probably have higher thread counts than my shirts. I put on my good suit, you know, the one I wear when pretending to be domesticated. And we headed out. Megan looked good. Black dress, heels, makeup, perfect. We walked in, and she immediately switched modes like a professional chameleon. 1 second, she's my wife. The next, she's Miss Corporate Sparkle, laughing louder, talking faster, and touching people's arms every time she said something relatable. It was like watching a nature documentary on social climbing. Observe the female marketer in her natural habitat. Note the use of buzzwords to establish dominance. Then he appeared. Brandon Cole. Of course, that was his name. The kind of name you just know belongs to a guy with perfect hair, an expensive suit, and a Rolex that probably had its own agent. He walked in with a swagger that said, I've never known the price of ground beef. The way Megan's face lit up when she saw him told me everything I needed to know. She didn't just light up. She illuminated. This wasn't some random coworker who shared meeting notes. This was the guy, the Brandon, the human version of a midlife crisis with a LinkedIn premium subscription. They locked eyes like they were starring in a perfume commercial. Immediate chemistry, giggling, whispering, trading inside jokes like ID teleported into a different language. I stood there, an unwanted extra in their rom-com, holding my drink like a decorative plant. Eventually, Brandon decided to acknowledge the human husband in the room. He extended his hand with this grip, just tight enough to assert dominance, but not tight enough for a lawsuit. "Oh, you're the husband," he said with a grin that deserved its own punchline. "Last I checked," I replied, trying not to let my jaw crack from how hard I was clenching it. They launched into a conversation about the project. The way they made it sound, this project was basically curing world hunger. "So many late nights," Brandon said. "We've really put in the hours, huh?" "Yeah, those weekend strategy sessions were brutal," Megan replied, laughing in that way you only laugh when you're remembering something inappropriate in front of a crowd. Ah, yes. Weekend strategy sessions, the corporate world's new term for definitely not cheating. Every word between them felt sharpened just enough to make me bleed if I commented. Brandon kept touching her arm, casual like every couple of sentences. She didn't move it away, didn't even glance at me, just kept smiling. My jaw tightened to the point my teeth were probably writing their own resignation letter. I was about 5 seconds away from throwing my drink at his Rolex. When Brandon upped his game, he reached into his wallet, pulled out a dollar bill, flicked it across the table, and smirked. "Don't worry, champ," he said. "He'll take excellent care of her tonight." The table exploded with laughter. Megan's co-workers couldn't get enough of it. One guy in a suit that cost about $4,000 practically fell out of his chair, wheezing. And Megan, my wife, she laughed, joined right in with them, and made eye contact with me while she laughed at her husband being disrespected by her boyfriend. That's when it hit me. This whole circus was theater. Every detail of it. She hadn't brought me here to support her career. She brought me here to be the entertainment. The sad husband prop. The setup was so obvious once I saw it. She wanted me to lose it, throw a drink, flip a table, get labeled the unstable one. Then she could play victim while Brandon comforted her with his cologne and moral flexibility. So I did the opposite. I picked up that dollar bill off the table, folded it clean, and tucked it neatly into my pocket. You could have heard a pin drop. I looked Brandon right in his smug, self-satisfied face, smiled just enough to make him uncomfortable, and said, "Thank you. Even though she isn't worth $1, you can keep her. No returns." The laughter died faster than Wi-Fi in a basement. Brandon's grin froze. Megan's face went blank like her firmware crashed mid-update. I stood up, put on my jacket with all the calm of a man whose rage had evolved into clarity, and walked out before I did something bail-worthy. I heard Megan call my name behind me, but it just blended into the background noise like an ad you skip without thinking. I got in my truck, turned the key. For the first time in months, I actually felt calm. Angry, sure, but also free, like I just finished a really bad movie and finally walked out before the credits rolled. Then around 4:30 a.m., my phone buzzed. Bank notification. Our joint credit card had a fresh charge. The Harrington Grand Hotel for $125. I took a screenshot. Proof. Not that I needed any. At 6:45, I heard her Lexus purring down the driveway. The sound of guilt, German engineered. She crept inside like a teenager sneaking in after curfew, heels in her hand, hoping I was still asleep. I was sitting in the kitchen, coffee mug in hand, scrolling through my phone like it was any other morning. She started humming, all casual, like she hadn't just spent the night committing marriage homicide. "Fun night?" I asked, watching her freeze mid-hum. She jumped, spilling coffee all over the counter. "Gosh, Aaron, you scared me," she said. "Looks like you had a fun night," I asked, voice calm enough to make her nervous. Her face did that thing where it ran through about 6 emotions in 5 seconds. Shock, guilt, fake innocence, back to guilt, and finally landed on her favorite square. Defensive. "The party went late," she said, waving a hand like it was no big deal. "A bunch of us went out after. I crashed on someone's couch instead of driving home. I'm a responsible adult." "Whose couch?" I asked. She blinked, lips twitching. "Does it matter?" "Yeah," I said. "Actually, it matters a lot." She sighed dramatically, rolling her eyes like she was auditioning for a soap opera. "Brandon offered his couch since he lives close to the hotel," she said quickly. "It was late, and I was tired." "Uh-huh," I said. "I guess you are now going to tell me that nothing happened, right?" She crossed her arms. "Of course nothing happened. Don't be ridiculous." So, I pulled out my phone, thumbed the screen, and turned it toward her. That's a funny-looking couch, I said. $425 for a nap. Seems steep. Her face drained color like a cheap printer running out of ink. That's not wait. The hotel has a lounge, she stammered. We were networking in the lounge. The charge must be from drinks. Drinks? I repeated, nodding. $400 worth of them. What was it? Limited edition air. She went quiet, eyes darting side to side like she was scrolling through her internal Rolodex of lies, trying to pick one that might survive cross-examination. And that's when I saw it just above her collar, peeking out from her perfectly adjusted blouse. A bright purple mark shining like a neon sign that read guilty. You've got something on your neck, I said. Her hand shot up so fast, she almost slapped herself, covering it like it was a state secret. Her face went through its usual emotional slider again. Surprise, panic, denial, then finally defiance. I must have burned myself with a curling iron yesterday, she said, chin lifting proudly like she'd just come up with a Nobel excuse. After all that, that's what she went with. The curling iron defense. Classic. I almost applauded. Creativity deserved points, even in disaster. Be careful. Sometimes being careless can cause burns that leave a permanent mark. She turned away, started making toast like nothing had just imploded. The smell of burnt bread filling the air while she chatted about dry cleaning and whether we should get Mexican or Italian for dinner next week. Just talking away like our marriage wasn't actively bleeding out on the kitchen floor. I'd seen enough. That was it. The line had been crossed. The curtain had dropped. The credits had rolled. And I was officially done being the decorative husband in her little corporate drama. The locks were changing today. Before she walked back through that door again with another man's jacket and another garbage excuse. I was making sure she needed a locksmith to get in. But it wasn't just about locks anymore. This was about principle. I was done pretending there was anything left to salvage. I wanted to see exactly how deep this betrayal rabbit hole went. And I had the spite-powered energy to find out. Sunday morning, I was up by 5:30 sipping coffee, so strong it could double as jet fuel. The sun barely had ambition yet, but I did. I grabbed my keys, headed to the hardware store, and bought 4 brand new deadbolts. Grade 1 security rating, the heavy-duty kind meant for people who have absolutely lost their patience. Picked up new handles while I was at it. If I was doing this, I was doing it right. Back home, I had the toolkit out and the first door halfway done when Blake wandered out around 9:30, looking like the ghost of Saturday morning. He squinted at the pile of locks. Dad, why are you changing all the locks? Security upgrade, I said, drilling in a screw, making sure only people who actually live here can get in. He watched me work for a minute, rubbing sleep out of his eyes. Does Mom know about this security upgrade? She's about to find out, I said. He smirked, leaning on the doorway. Want help? Sure, I said. Grab that Phillips head. We worked side by side on the last 2 doors without saying much. Didn't need to. Had seen her come home at dawn more than once lately. The kid's not stupid. He takes after his mother in brains, his father in attitude. When we finished, I handed him a shiny new set of keys. Do not, under any circumstances, give these to your mother, I said. He nodded once. Got it, Dad. Megan left around 10:30, claiming she was off to hot yoga, which I was pretty sure was code for whatever the opposite of yoga is. She stood at the door trying to make small talk, talking about dinner plans, her day, the weather, like she'd forgotten ID caught her in high-definition betrayal mode less than 24 hours ago. I nodded along, responding with all the enthusiasm of a parking meter. By 7:15 p.m., I heard the unmistakable sound of betrayal on 4 tires pulling into the driveway. I was sitting in the living room pretending to read a book. Couldn't have told you what it was about. Probably didn't even have words on the page I was staring at. Blake was upstairs with his door cracked, definitely eavesdropping, possibly recording for his own personal documentary. Then came the footsteps on the porch, light and confident, followed by the jingle of keys. Silence. Another jingle, louder this time. Then the sound of metal scraping metal as she kept poking the lock like it was the problem. A couple seconds later, a frustrated sigh. Then came the full angrily testing every key on the ring routine. Like maybe sheer persistence would magically undo my day's handiwork. Finally, she yelled, Aaron, through the door. I let her yell it 4 times. Each one got slightly higher in pitch, started firm, then confused, then annoyed, then almost panicked. Beautiful progression, really. Eventually, I got up, stretched like a man in no hurry, and strolled over to open the door. She stood there in yoga pants and an overpriced athletic top that probably cost more than my entire set of tools. Her hair was perfectly messy in that I totally worked out kind of way that guarantees she didn't. She held up her keys baffled. The key isn't working. Yeah, I said, neither is our marriage. Her jaw dropped like a bad garage door. What? Aaron, that's not we need to talk about this. Let me in so we can have an adult conversation. Adult conversation? I said. That's rich coming from someone who spent Friday night in a hotel room and came home wearing another man's mark. Her voice jumped half an octave. That's not what happened. You're twisting everything because you're insecure. Insecure? I said, raising an eyebrow. Go talk to Brandon. You know, the guy whose couch you supposedly slept on. I told him once goods are sold, they can't be returned. He can try customer service. She tried the handle, then actually put her shoulder into the door like she could push her way back into dignity. I didn't move. Just stood there, hands in my pockets, unbothered as a granite countertop. Aaron, this is my house, too. You can't just lock me out, she said, voice cracking. I just did, I said, leaning against the frame. Maybe crash on Brandon's couch tonight. I hear you're familiar with his furniture. That's when Mrs. Cooper from next door suddenly realized she had an urgent need to check her mailbox. Funny timing, since it was empty yesterday and the day before that. About 4 seconds later, the Millers magically appeared in their yard across the street, pretending to inspect their dead patch of grass like it held the secrets of the universe. Nobody was even trying to be subtle. Small-town theater at its finest. Live from suburbia, one marriage imploding before dinner. Megan noticed the audience and immediately dropped her voice, switching from angry wife to woman unfairly persecuted before witnesses. You're being unreasonable, she hissed. This conversation ended, I said, when you turned our marriage into a group project without my consent. That one hit. Her face cycled through shades of red that Crayola doesn't make. Then she grabbed her phone, thumb flying across the screen like she was texting legal reinforcements, stormed back to her car, and peeled out hard enough to leave tire marks on my driveway. Class act till the very end. I waved to the neighbors like a man had just won something, then walked back inside feeling oddly peaceful. Blake came down the stairs, eyes wide, smirking slightly. Dad, that was cold, he said. Your mother deserves this, I said. He didn't argue, just nodded, still holding his phone like he was part of a live broadcast. My phone buzzed a few seconds later. Text from Emily, who was at a friend's house. Blake sent me video. Mom looked like she wanted to murder you. LOL. Yeah, LOL. I texted back even though it hadn't quite hit yet, because what came Monday morning made the lockout look like amateur hour. Monday brought what I like to call the unwanted gifts. Big, thick manila envelope, logo from some firm with a name that sounded expensive. I opened it at the kitchen counter, hands shaking just slightly, not from fear, but from the kind of rage that bruised quiet inside. 3 pages of legal artistry. I skimmed, then reread, then wanted to set the envelope on fire. Megan wanted money, wanted it now, wanted a lot of it. Spousal support, half of everything, all wrapped up in friendly legal terms designed to sound like equality instead of daylight robbery. But the cherry on top, she wanted half my business, half of Hayes Custom Forge. The business I started in my garage with borrowed tools, scraped knuckles, and caffeine-fueled stubbornness. The same business Shed spent years calling too blue-collar, not sophisticated enough, just metal work whenever her high-end friends asked what her husband did. Now suddenly, it was worth owning. Funny how the woman who used to complain about the smell of hot metal on my clothes and who rolled her eyes every time I came home with soot on my shirt wanted half of it now. Amazing how money changes perspective. I called Patrick. Had been my attorney for years, the kind of guy who could draft an airtight contract, quote case law by memory, and still find time to complain about his golf swing. Aaron, he said when he picked up, cheerful like always. How's business? Business is fine, I said. Marriage is dead. I need your help killing it officially. There was a pause long enough for him to process the tone. He said finally, voice lower now. My wife saw Megan at that place downtown 3 weeks ago with some guy who definitely wasn't you. We figured it was only a matter of time. Perfect. Everyone knew but me. The neighborhood gossip grapevine apparently had better intel than my marriage. That one hit harder than I wanted to admit. Being the last to know your wife's cheating, that's a special humiliation. Like showing up to a surprise party. Everyone's already left. I just got a letter from her lawyer, I said. She wants spousal support and half my business. Patrick laughed. The confident kind of lawyer laugh that says he's about to earn every cent of his fee. Get to my office tomorrow morning. 8:30 sharp. Bring financial documents. And Aaron, he added, stop talking to her. Everything goes through me now. The next morning, I showed up at Patrick's downtown office carrying a cardboard box big enough to qualify as emotional baggage. Inside was my entire financial life. Bank statements, business records, tax returns, mortgage papers, and that glorious letter from Megan's lawyer. Patrick was waiting with 2 coffees and that smirk lawyers get when they know something you don't. Sitting next to him was a woman I'd never met. Asian, late 30s, sharp gray suit and glasses that practically announced, I'm smarter than you, and we both know it. Aaron, Patrick said, meet Hannah, forensic accountant, best in the business. She's going to dig through your finances and find where money goes when people think nobody's looking. Hannah stood, shook my hand with enough strength to make an impression, and smiled in a way that was both reassuring and terrifying. Let's find where your wife's been hiding her betrayal in spreadsheet form. We sat around Patrick's big conference table, the kind of polished wood that says, you're about to lose or save a lot of money. I started unpacking my life. Bank statements, mortgage files, business ledgers, the works. Hannah's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. You could practically hear the sound of mental calculators whirring. She immediately started sorting everything into tidy little piles. Let's start with the basics, she said, voice crisp and efficient. Community property state, married 23 years, 2 kids. What assets are we looking at? I ran through the numbers. House worth about $420. Business clears roughly $280 a year in profit. Retirement accounts, savings, basically everything you'd expect from 2 decades of me working and her networking over $40 salads. And she's claiming what grounds? Hannah asked, typing as she spoke. Irreconcilable differences, I said, which is legal code for, I got caught cheating and want to make it sound mutual. Patrick leaned back in his chair, hands behind his head like a man plotting his weekend barbecue. Hey, Race, what we're doing, he said. Hannah is going to audit your accounts, credit cards, any financial activity over the past year. We need to know if she's been hiding money, spending inappropriately, anything we can use. How long? I asked. For days, Hannah said without looking up. I'm very motivated by spite, and cheating spouses offends my sense of order. She smiled. The kind of smile that probably gave IRS auditors goosebumps. It was the look of someone who truly enjoyed dismantling financial lies one receipt at a time. Patrick mentioned hotel charges, Hannah asked. Yep, the Harrington Grand Hotel for $125. She claims it was for networking drinks. I call it high-priced infidelity. Hannah's fingers were already flying across her laptop keyboard. What card? Joint Amex, the one linked to my business account for legitimate expenses, I said. Her eyes sharpened like a hawk spotting prey. Your business account. So, she's been using company funds for personal extracurriculars. She grinned faintly. This is going to be good. I slid a sticky note with my login credentials across the table. She nodded, cracked her knuckles, and immediately sank into the glow of her screen. I just sat back and watched her vanish into spreadsheet heaven. After about 40 minutes of furious clicking and muttering something about irregular categorization, Hannah suddenly stopped. Her expression changed. It was the same look a gold prospector probably had after hitting a vein. She looked up slowly, one eyebrow raised. Aaron, she said, when was the last time you actually reviewed your business credit card statements? I look at the totals every month, I said. Make sure nothing's wildly off. Right. She turned her laptop around, and my stomach immediately started drafting its resignation letter. Because your wife has been very busy with your money, she said sweetly. In the past 7 months, she's charged over $38,000 to your business account. Hotels, restaurants, spa days, shopping. I blinked. $38,000. Hannah nodded, scrolling. Hey, Race, a fun one. $550 at some lingerie boutique. Is that a legitimate business expense for making fire pits? I groaned. Depends. Do lace and steel mix well? She didn't laugh. She was too busy scrolling through the graveyard of my savings. The Harrington Grand Hotel appears 11 times in 5 months, she continued. Always Friday or Saturday nights. Charges ranging from $380 to $625 each time. Perfect, I said flatly. She turned my credit line into their weekend getaway punch card. Hannah glanced up. That's not business travel. That's an affair headquarters. Each new charge was another gut punch. Fancy steakhouses, high-end wine shops, a spa resort in Asheville, room service tabs that could have fed a family of 4 twice. My money had been funding her affair, the hotels, the dinners, the champagne-soaked lies. I wasn't just betrayed, I was financing the betrayal. I rubbed my temples. Can we use this? Oh, we're absolutely using this, Hannah said. Her voice equal parts satisfaction and vengeance. Misuse of business funds, pattern of deception, it all destroys her spousal support claim. You can't say you need money while you're spending 38 grand on hotel rooms and steak dinners. She kept typing, her eyes narrowing further. Look at this. Regular transfers from your joint account to another account. 1,800 here, 1,400 there, 2,800 last month. Always to the same destination. She zoomed in on the details. Account holder BC Ventures, LLC. BC, I said slowly. Brandon Cole. Hannah's lips curled into a grim little smile. She's been funding her boyfriend with your money. I stared at the screen, the reality crashing harder than a dropped anvil. What? Hannah scrolled back up, pointing. BC Ventures, registered about 7 months ago. Principal owner Brandon Cole, business purpose listed as marketing consulting. She leaned back, clearly enjoying this. This is clearly a pass-through for personal income. We just sat there for a minute, the 3 of us, staring at the screen like it had personally insulted us. The silence was heavy, the kind where you can actually hear the sound of betrayal echoing between your ears. Megan hadn't just cheated. She had been looting our finances to fund her little affair. She hadn't just disrespected me. She'd robbed me. She'd taken money from the business I built with my own 2 hands. Money forged from sweat, steel, and burned fingertips to bankroll her spa weekends with some guy who probably thought a socket wrench was a new brand of IPA. But wait, Patrick wasn't done yet. Aaron, he said slowly, his lawyer brain already firing up. I need to ask this Brandon Cole guy. Where does he work? I have only met him once. I am not sure what he does, but I think it is some marketing job, I said. Outdoor products or marketing or something in that realm. Patrick turned toward me, and a slow grin crept across his face. What's your business called again? Hayes Custom Forge, I said. But I also own a subsidiary, Summit Outdoor Design. Bought them about 4 years ago. Different market for my custom projects. Why? He leaned back in his chair, eyes twinkling like a man who just spotted divine irony on a legal letterhead. Then he started laughing. Not a chuckle. Full-blown. Throw your head back, can't catch your breath laughing. Hannah, he said between laughs, pull up the corporate registration for Summit Outdoor Design. She typed with the intensity of someone hacking through government firewalls, clicked a few times, and then froze. Her jaw actually dropped. Parent company Hayes Custom Forge, she read. Owner Aaron Hayes. I leaned forward, already sensing the punchline coming for me. Check the employee roster. Hannah's fingers flew again, navigating into my accounting software. Then she turned the screen toward me. There it was in bold black and white text. Simple, devastating, and hilarious all at once. Brandon Cole, Marketing Head, Summit Outdoor Design. Salary, $88,000 annually. I blinked, then read it again just to make sure my coffee hadn't caused a stroke. The guy who threw a dollar bill at me. The guy involved with my wife. The guy using my company card to fund his romantic escapades. That genius was cashing a paycheck signed by me every 2 weeks. And then I laughed loudly. The kind of laugh that starts somewhere deep and grows until it can't be stopped. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. My chest hurt. My ribs hurt. My pride hurt the least. It was too busy enjoying the show. It was beautiful. So spectacularly, perfectly beautiful. The universe had finally decided to hand me a gift wrapped in irony, sealed with poetic justice, and sprinkled with a dash of pure karma. Patrick was practically vibrating with excitement as he gathered files like a kid getting ready for Christmas morning. We're not just winning this divorce, he said. We're making legal history. And he wasn't kidding because while Megan wanted half of everything, I was about to make sure she walked away with a story to tell instead. As for Brandon, his life was about to turn into a cautionary LinkedIn post. The hearing day arrived with all the enthusiasm of a root canal appointment. I put on my court suit. Yes, the one specifically purchased for the occasion. Turns out married men really should budget for categories like business casual, weddings, funerals, and legal proceedings against your own spouse. Patrick met me on the courthouse steps looking like the kind of man who could win custody of your furniture if he wanted to. Remember, he said, straightening his tie. Stay calm. Answer directly. Don't volunteer extra information. And for God's sake, Aaron, don't let them bait you into losing your temper. I'm calm, I said. And I was cold calm. The kind of calm you get when every ounce of emotion has already burned out and all that's left is clarity and spite. The courtroom wasn't quite the grand arena I'd imagined. More like a mid-tier conference room someone had glued paneling on and called justice. Judge Elaine Porter presided, early 60s, steel gray hair, and the kind of sharp-eyed stare that could stop a clock. She looked like she'd seen every variety of marital stupidity known to man. And now she was about to see ours. Across the aisle sat Megan. She dressed the part, of course. Navy blue dress, pearls, and makeup perfectly balanced to say brave but wounded. Her entire look screamed, I am the responsible wife who simply endured too much. She wouldn't look at me, which was fine. I had nothing left to say that wouldn't earn me contempt of court. Her lawyer, Brian Keller, started strong. Classic performance, voice steady, tone dripping sympathy. Your Honor, he said, my client, Mrs. Hayes, sacrificed her own career ambitions to support her husband's business. I nearly laughed. Megan sacrificed. The woman could network in her sleep and still manage to expense it. Keller kept going, warming up like a preacher on Sunday. She endured years of emotional neglect while Mr. Hayes focused solely on his work. She was left lonely, unseen, dismissed. Patrick whispered, here comes the violin section, under his breath. I nearly smiled. Then Keller looked straight at me with textbook lawyer gravitas. And when she finally found the courage to seek independence, Mr. Hayes retaliated. He publicly humiliated her, changing the locks on their shared home. He refuses to communicate. He has denied her access to marital assets. Judge Porter peered over her glasses the way a teacher does when she already knows who broke the projector but wants you to confess anyway. Mr. Hayes, she said, would you like to respond? I stood, buttoned my jacket because formality never hurt, and said, Your Honor, I'd like to address the public humiliation claim. My wife humiliated herself when she spent the night in a hotel with another man and came home wearing his mark. I didn't humiliate her publicly. She managed that all by herself. I just refused to keep pretending everything was fine. Someone in the gallery snorted loudly. Blake, my son, had insisted on coming for moral support, but his idea of support was apparently live commentary. I continued, voice calm but sharp enough to cut steel. As for the locks, I changed them after discovering my wife had been using our joint funds and my business account to pay for her hotel stays. That's not vindictive, Your Honor. That's self-preservation. That's a complete mischaracterization, Keller blurted, already rising like his chair was on fire. But Patrick, bless him, was ready. He stood with what I call the folder of doom, stuffed to the brim with every receipt, transaction, and bit of digital evidence Hannah had dug up during her vengeance-fueled audit. If it pleases the court, Patrick said smoothly, we have documentation that directly contradicts Mr. Keller's narrative. Judge Porter nodded for him to proceed, and the man went into full courtroom theater mode. He laid the paperwork out like evidence at a crime scene. Printed statements, Amex logs, hotel invoices, transfer records, all neatly labeled. I almost expected him to pull out a laser pointer. The judge began reading page by page, and I watched the transformation, neutral, skeptical, then full-blown annoyed. She finally looked up at Megan, who was suddenly more interested in the table than anyone else. Mrs. Hayes, the judge said, her tone measured but icy. Can you explain why you charged $38,000 to your husband's business account over 7 months, including multiple hotel stays, luxury dinners, and bank transfers to an LLC owned by a Mr. Brandon Cole? Megan opened her mouth, closed it, looked at her lawyer. Keller shifted in his seat like the floor got hot. Your Honor, he started. Those were all work-related business expenses at the Harrington Grand Hotel. Judge Porter interrupted, flipping through a page. The Harrington Grand Hotel. 11 times in 5 months. She tilted her head, peering right over the rims of her glasses. These pictures from the hotel CCTV footage show you entering a room with Mr. Cole. What kind of business did you take care of inside a hotel room? The room went quiet enough to hear Blake stifle another laugh. The tension was so thick you could forge it into one of my grill plates. And then came the question, the one that made this entire circus of betrayal worth the parking fee. Mrs. Hayes, Judge Porter said slowly, were you aware that Mr. Brandon Cole was employed by a company owned by your husband? More silence. Megan stared anywhere but at the judge or me. The floor, the wall, her lawyer's sleeve. Suddenly, everything in that courtroom was fascinating except the consequences of her own actions. Judge Porter's voice broke the silence like a hammer. He'll take that as a yes. Or at least, Mrs. Hayes, you should have known, given that you were having an affair with him and using marital funds to support that affair. I could have retired right then and there from satisfaction alone. What followed was the most beautiful 21 minutes of my life. Pure, uninterrupted justice and surround sound. Judge Porter started reading her judgment, calm and deliberate, like a god reciting the 10 Commandments of poetic retribution. Mr. Hayes will retain full ownership of the marital home. No buyout required. Megan blinked rapidly, like maybe if she fluttered fast enough, she could reverse time. The business, including both divisions, the judge continued, is to remain entirely under Mr. Hayes' ownership, free and clear. I swear I saw Patrick audibly contain a laugh. Custody of the children. Mr. Hayes will have primary custodial rights. Mrs. Hayes will have standard visitation as defined by the court. I shot a glance in Megan's direction. She looked like she'd swallowed a lemon dipped in regret. And Mrs. Hayes, the judge said, barely glancing up from the papers, is hereby ordered to repay $65,000 to Mr. Hayes in addition to covering his legal fees and court costs. That was it, the knockout punch. You could feel the oxygen leave Megan's lungs. As for assets Mrs. Hayes will retain, Judge Porter added, she will keep her personal belongings, her yoga equipment, and a 2010 Honda Civic that Mr. Hayes indicates was scheduled for donation. Blake couldn't hold it in. His laughter exploded across the courtroom, echoing off every wooden panel. Even the bailiff smirked. Megan looked destroyed, pale, streaked with running mascara, eyes red. A full-on raccoon meltdown happening right there under fluorescent lights. It was tragic, hilarious, and deeply satisfying all at once. When we walked out, Patrick clapped me on the back, already talking logistics about settlement paperwork like a man proud of his day's work. Blake was waiting by the doors with a grin so wide it could power a small city. He held out a fist. Dad, that was better than any movie. I bumped it, shaking my head. Yeah, I said. I can tell you enjoyed the show a little too much. My phone buzzed the moment we stepped out of the courthouse. Text from Emily. Blake sent me updates. This is the greatest day of my life. Yeah, it really was. But as satisfying as that courtroom takedown had been, I still had one last piece of business to finish, the kind that required coffee, patience, and a very specific kind of attitude. Tuesday morning, I rolled into Summit Outdoor Design at 7:20 sharp. The building was quiet, too quiet for what was coming. My assistant, Carla, met me at the door with her usual sixth sense that had saved me from public relations disasters on more than one occasion. 12 years working together, and she could smell trouble before I even spoke. Morning, boss, she said, coffee in one hand. You've got that look. What look? I asked, pretending innocence. The look that says someone's about to have a bad day. Good, I said. Need you to schedule a mandatory meeting. All division heads, 10:15 sharp. Conference room. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she scrolled through her tablet. All division heads means Brandon Cole. Especially Brandon Cole, I said. She didn't ask questions. Carla never did when the air got charged like that. She just nodded and started typing. Consider it done. Anything else? Pull Brandon's personnel file, I said. On my desk in 25 minutes. She tilted her head. Getting messy? I smirked. We passed messy last week. Now we're in scorched earth territory. By 9:45, my desk looked like an evidence board. Brandon's full employment history spread out in front of me. Hiring documents, performance reviews, internal memos. Had been brought on 3 years ago, right after ID bought the company. Solid resume, decent numbers. On paper, the guy looked fine, reliable, marketable, the kind of employee HR loves because they never quite catch him doing the wrong thing, even when everyone knows he's doing it. Then there were the notes. Those delicate little lines HR uses to avoid lawsuits. Overly familiar with female staff. Exhibits boundary-pushing friendliness. Translation. Creep with a smile who knows exactly how far he can go without lighting his career on fire. Reading between the lines, the guy had been dancing this dance his entire professional life. Charm the boss wife. Flirt with the assistants. Play the part of the golden boy who's just being friendly. Not anymore. I sat back and pulled out my wallet, slipped out the dollar bill. ID kept it since that night. Smoothed it flat against my desk like it was a piece of evidence. And in its way, it was. The thing about humiliation is you never forget it. The details stick, the exact words, the tone, the sound of your wife laughing while her boyfriend disrespects you. That memory brands itself deep into your brain like a mark that never fades. At 9:55, I walked into the conference room and took my place at the head of the table. There's something deeply satisfying about being first in the room you own. It gives you time to set the tone. I placed the dollar bill dead center on the polished surface just for symbolic flair, then sat back and waited. By 10, they started trickling in. Holly from operations, Eric from finance, Denise from HR, all competent people, all looking mildly terrified. The air carried that collective tension you get before bad news hits, like everyone could smell the singed ozone of impending chaos. No one schedules an emergency meeting at 10:15 on a Tuesday for positive reasons. They took their seats quietly. Holly fiddled with her pen. Eric avoided eye contact like it was radioactive. Denise gave me that HR smile that says, "Please let this not be about a lawsuit." Then, right on time, the star of the show entered. Brandon Cole. Perfect posture, expensive suit, leather portfolio tucked under his arm like he was about to pitch the next big marketing campaign that didn't belong to him. His hair was the same level of smug precision as always. Each strand probably insured individually. He strode in confidently, smiling like he owned the place. Then he saw me. Freeze frame. His face drained faster than discount coffee through a filter. The smile disintegrated. His eyes went wide, darting between me, the chair I was sitting in, and the logos on the wall, finally connecting some overdue dots. His jaw slackened just enough to confirm that math was never his strong suit. You could practically hear the gears in his brain grinding. Wait, Hayes Custom Forge. Summit Outdoor Design. Hayes. And then it hit him. The moment, the exact second he realized the blue-collar guy had thrown a dollar bill at wasn't just Megan's husband. He was the boss. The actual boss. The one whose name was on his paycheck. The one whose company had been charming his way through using corporate funds. It was a beautiful cinematic moment. If I could have poured popcorn, I would have. Morning, everyone, I said casually. No raised voice, just calm authority. Thanks for making time on short notice. Please have a seat. Chairs shuffled, papers rustled. Brandon remained standing too long, hovering awkwardly at the edge of the table like a malfunctioning hologram. Every eye in the room was on him, and he knew it. Finally, like a man heading to his own execution, he sat down. The chair creaked a little under the tension, and his hands were shaking. Morning, Brandon, I said, folding my hands on the table like we were about to discuss quarterly sales instead of his catastrophic life choices. I heard you had an interesting Friday night. How's Megan doing? The entire room froze. You could have heard a bead of sweat hit the polished table. Tara stopped breathing. Jared blinked once, then immediately looked at his notebook, like maybe if he wrote something down, he could claim ignorance later. Monica from HR looked like she was about to start drafting a harassment memo just to be safe. Brandon blinked rapidly, jaw flexing like he was trying to chew up words and swallow them. Mr. Hayes, he stammered. I'm not sure what you're... Oh, I think you know exactly what I'm referring to. I reached into my inside pocket and pulled it out. The dollar bill. The one ID kept like a souvenir from the most humiliating night of my life. I unfolded it slowly, deliberately, every motion exaggerated enough to keep his eyes glued to my hands. Then I slid it across the table. The room stayed dead silent as it spun once, twice, then stopped perfectly in front of his expensive leather portfolio. The company party, I said, at the Harrington Grand Hotel. The one where you were very generous with your financial offerings in exchange for the company of my soon-to-be ex-wife. He stared at that dollar bill like it might explode. His lips parted, but nothing came out. You don't? I asked. Let me help. That's the dollar bill you threw at me. Your boss, the owner of this entire operation, while making jokes about taking care of my wife. Remember now? Denise gasped, sharp intake. Holly from design covered her mouth, eyes wide. whispering under her breath something that sounded a lot like, "Oh my God." Brandon finally muttered, "Mr. Hayes, I can explain." "Please don't," I said, cutting him off before he could start fumbling whatever lie he was assembling. I've heard enough explanations lately to last me several tax seasons. I leaned back in my chair and looked toward the door. "Denise, grab Brandon's personnel file from my office, please." Denise, bless her heart, practically sprinted out of the room without making eye contact. The rest of us sat there in silence while Brandon started sweating through his $1,000 suit jacket. His jaw tightened, hands trembling slightly on the table. The confidence was gone, replaced by wide-eyed panic. I watched it happen in real time, like a slow transition from smug to doomed. He was running the math in his head, trying to find an escape route, a loophole, a miracle. There wasn't one. "You know what's funny, Brandon?" I said, leaning forward just slightly. His eyes flicked up, wary like a deer hearing the rifle click. "Even though ID never met you before, I actually wanted to. When we acquired this division, your former bosses had good things to say. They told me you had potential, good credentials, decent ideas." I paused, let the silence stretch. What they didn't mention was that you also had a habit of disrespecting your boss and getting involved with his wife. Now, that's what I call poor judgment. He stammered. "I didn't know. She never said. I thought you were just what?" I cut him off. "Some guy you could throw $1 at?" He shut his mouth, eyes fixed on the tabletop. Smart choice. Right then, Denise came back in. She handed me Brandon's personnel file, her hand trembling just enough that the papers fluttered. Then she sat back down quickly, keeping her eyes focused on literally anything else. The tension in the room was so thick you could weld with it. Everyone knew what was happening. They just weren't sure if they were supposed to breathe while it did. I flipped through the file like a man reading a eulogy. "Let's see," I said, tapping a section with my finger. "Employees are expected to maintain professional conduct both during and outside work hours." I looked up and locked eyes with him. "Would you say throwing money at your boss and being involved with his wife qualifies as professional conduct?" "It was just a joke," he said weakly. "Oh, hey, erase the joke," I said, standing up slow, letting the moment hang in the air. Then I leaned forward just enough for him to feel it. "You're fired." The word came out with that Vince McMahon growl. Half declaration, half public execution. The room jumped a little. Then, settling back down, I added calmly, effective immediately. "Conduct unbecoming. Clean out your desk within the hour. Security will escort you. Final paycheck will be mailed. Benefits in today." He opened his mouth again, voice going high in that panicked way people sound when the ground gives out underneath them. I could practically see the sweat pooling at his collar. "And before you start imagining wrongful termination," I added, "feel free to have your attorney contact mine. My lawyers will be absolutely delighted to discuss your extracurricular activities with my wife in open court, complete with discovery and depositions." The blood drained from his face so fast, it was almost impressive. He cycled through colors: white, red, panic gray, repeat. "Wait, you can't do this," he blurted out. "I absolutely can," I said. "Denise, call security." "Already texted them," she said without missing a beat. "They're outside, right on cue." Two of our security guys stepped in. Massive, calm, and far too polite for the job they were about to do. Gentle giants, really, but ones who carried the kind of silent authority that said, "You don't want to argue." They flanked Brandon as he stood up, still sputtering. "This is ridiculous. You're making a mistake. This isn't fair." Nobody said a word. Nobody stopped him. They all just watched as he was escorted out, his protests echoing down the hallway that suddenly felt way too long. And the best part, nobody cared. The walk of shame through the office was magnificent. Absolute poetry in motion. Every single head turned as Brandon trudged past, eyes wide, whispers brewing, keyboards silenced mid-click. The man looked like a deflated balloon in a $1,000 suit. His confidence evaporated somewhere between the conference room and the elevator. By the time security escorted him out, his reputation was nothing more than an office legend in the making. The meeting dissolved in stunned silence. Everyone stayed seated for a few extra seconds, digesting what they just witnessed. Some looked terrified, some vindicated, and one guy from accounting actually whispered, "Damn, I don't blame them. It's not every day you see karma clock in for a full shift before lunch." I went back to my office, poured myself another coffee, and waited. My phone stayed quiet for a few hours until, Right on schedule, it buzzed with a voicemail. Megan's voice came crackling through, high-pitched and frantic. Brandon just showed up screaming that he got fired because of me. What happened? You can't just... I stopped it there. No need to ruin the moment. Her panic was music to my ears. But the real satisfaction didn't come that day. It came 7 months later. By then, life had settled into something that actually resembled living instead of just surviving. Spring arrived in Tennessee, warm and perfect. Flowers in bloom, grass green again. The air carrying that lazy weekend smell, smoke, hickory, and something good on the grill. I'd sit out on the porch in the evenings with a cold drink and the kind of calm only people who've burned their baggage achieve. Megan, from what I heard, was working at some smaller marketing agency, making maybe half of what she used to. According to Blake, who still talked to her occasionally, she was finding herself, which apparently is what middle-aged people say when they've completely demolished their lives and need a noble way to rebrand failure. She'd moved into a one-bedroom apartment proudly advertised as luxury living. Translation: slightly newer carpet and a gym that hadn't seen a treadmill turned on since installation day. As for Brandon, poetic justice had relocated him to Florida. Word around the business grapevine said he was now selling boats at a marina, probably trying to sweet-talk customers into life-changing purchases. The cherry on top, his new boss apparently knew the entire story through mutual connections in the industry. I didn't confirm it. Didn't deny it either. Some things are better left to karma. My business was thriving. Word traveled fast in our circles. It always does. Apparently, being known as the guy who handled his divorce with equal parts dignity and controlled fire was great for business. Go figure. ID hired 3 new fabricators, expanded the workshop, and turned our small operation into something that actually needed a parking plan. The backlog jumped from 3 months to 8. My accountant was thrilled. I was eating steak off grills I couldn't even keep in stock. Business had literally tripled, and all it had cost me was my marriage, my pride, and one very expensive lesson in trust. Then, like the universe couldn't resist adding one more twist, my doorbell rang. One Tuesday evening in May. Blake was away at college. Emily was at a friend's place. Just me, a cold beer, and a documentary about volcanoes narrating the slow destruction of something beautiful. Fitting, really. I opened the door. Megan. She looked like she'd crawled out of one of those before photos they show you in self-help seminars. Hair unwashed, eyes red and puffy, sweatpants I recognized from 6 years ago back when life hadn't gone fully off the rails. Behind her, the Civic engine idled in the driveway, making noises that sounded like an asthmatic lawn mower gasping its last breath. I guessed if she cut the engine, it wouldn't start again. "Aaron, can we talk?" she said. I leaned casually against the door frame, taking my time before answering. "We can talk out here," I said. The thing about desperation is that you can smell it before it even speaks, and Megan was radiating it like a broken space heater. Every twitch, every fidget, every apologetic half-smile screamed, "Please fix the mess I made." She started her monologue, the grand apology tour. It hit all the familiar beats. How she'd been confused. How the pressure of her job and life clouded her judgment. How Tracy had filled her head with bad ideas. How Brandon made her feel wanted. Basically, the greatest hits album of the cheater's playbook. I didn't interrupt, just listened and sipped my beer as she went on about therapy, about working on herself, about how she finally realized what she had, what she'd thrown away, what really mattered. Her voice softened on that last bit, all quiet and earnest, the kind of tone designed to pull at old memories and guilt that no longer existed. She paused there, looking at me, expecting that flicker, that little shred of sympathy. This was the part where she expected me to feel something. "Brandon dumped you, didn't he?" I asked. The words came out before I could stop them. Not that I wanted to. The way her face collapsed told me everything I needed to know. That was a yes. All right. No need for follow-up questions. Her expression went from defiant to broken in 3 seconds flat. I nodded slowly. "Any item worth $1 has a shelf life," I said. "Guess for Brandon, yours was short." She flinched, but tried to recover immediately, backpedaling. "That's not the point," she said quickly. I genuinely want to make amends. To see if maybe we can find our way back to each other." And right on cue, as if the heavens themselves were tired of her performance, the Civic made a noise like a refrigerator coughing up its soul. A loud metallic grind followed by a pitiful clunk. I turned my head just enough to glance at it, then looked back at her. Didn't say a word, just leaned against the door frame and let the silence do its best work. She kept talking anyway. That's the thing about guilt. It fills silence like air rushing into a vacuum. She started rambling about counseling, starting slow, rebuilding trust, and how she was willing to do whatever it takes. It was all so neatly phrased, so polished. I half expected her to hand me a PowerPoint printout titled Operation Redemption. Behind her, the Civic groaned again, this time with a noise that sounded expensive, like it knew it was part of the show and wanted a line of its own. I interrupted her mid-sentence. How much does it cost to fix? She blinked, completely thrown. What? I nodded toward the car. The repair. How much is the quote? Her face went red. I'm not here about the car. This is about us, about our marriage. Our marriage ended, I said, my tone flat, unshaken, when you laughed while your boyfriend threw money at me. When you decided to disrespect me in front of half your office. As if on cue, the Civic made another sound, louder, uglier, like it was agreeing with me. Honestly, it was perfect timing. She tried one last pivot. I've changed, she said. People make mistakes. 23 years should count for something. It did count, I said. Past tense. It counted when I worked 60-hour weeks to build a business. When I showed up at all your corporate events, even though you were embarrassed to introduce me. When I stayed faithful while you were out exploring your options. The Civic sputtered again, gave one last choked whine, then just died completely. No dramatic smoke, no explosion, just silence. The silence was deafening. Megan stared at the Civic, then back at me. Her eyes started watering. The kind of tears that aren't about sadness, but about the moment someone's fantasy finally packs up and leaves town. It wasn't heartbreak. It was realization. Do you need me to call you a tow truck? I asked. She shook her head quickly. Brandon used to help with car stuff. Then she froze, realizing what had just fallen out of her mouth. The color drained straight from her face, like someone pulled the plug. I didn't say a word, just stayed there, leaning against the door frame, letting her sit in it. The broken car behind her, the broken life around her. The perfect metaphor parked right there in my driveway. She looked at me like she'd been waiting for something. For me to step in, to fix it all, to be the guy I used to be, the one who'd bail her out, patch the roof, solve the mess, and never complain. But that guy, he didn't live here anymore. Her voice cracked when she spoke again. I miss you. I miss us. I made terrible mistakes. But can't you see I'm trying? I looked at her, really looked, and it all clicked. She wasn't standing there because she had some grand revelation about love or regret. She was there because her safety net was gone and her world had caved in. This wasn't an apology. It was a rescue request. An ID retired from that job. Behind her, the Civic gave a little shudder and started leaking something dark across the concrete. Oil, transmission fluid, whatever it was. It looked expensive and terminal. He'll email you a mechanic's number, I said. You should probably get that looked at before it becomes a permanent driveway decoration. She just stood there staring at me, waiting for the old pattern to kick in, for me to step forward, fix the car, fix her, fix everything. I didn't move, didn't blink. After a long minute, she finally got it. The performance was done. No encore, no slow clap, no forgiveness. Megan turned, shoulders slumped, walked back to the Civic. She tried starting it once nothing. Second time, an ugly grind. Third, silence. On the fourth try, it coughed to life, loud and sputtering. A noise that probably violated several environmental regulations and basic dignity. She put it in reverse and rolled out slowly, the car wheezing down the street, leaving behind a shiny trail of leaking fluid like it was marking the path of regret. Poetic, really. I went back inside and locked the door, that new deadbolt sliding into place with a clean, satisfying click. Yeah, that sound never got old. It was the sound of peace, security, and the absolute absence of drama. I stood there for a second, just letting it sink in. A door closed, literally and figuratively. 6 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Blake. Mom called, crying, the text read. Said you refused to help with her car. Were you really going to let her break down on the highway? I smirked. Thumbed a reply. Did she think about that before turning our marriage into a joke? It didn't take him long. Fair point. Want pizza for dinner tomorrow? That kid, he got it. Smart, grounded, and mercifully allergic to manipulation. The kind of maturity that only comes from watching your parents' lives turn into a cautionary tale. I put my phone down and turned toward my office wall. The dollar bill was still there, framed behind glass, crisp and proud. Beneath it, mounted on a brushed steel plate ID forged myself, sat the company's new unofficial motto: respect the man with grease on his hands. He probably signs your paycheck. It never failed to make clients grin, though the story behind it had a very different flavor of satisfaction. Business was booming. The workshop was full, the waiting list impossible, and the crew running smoother than ever. Life finally looked like what it was always supposed to be: simple, steady mine. Outside the window, I could see the glow from the forge reflecting off clean steel, the rhythmic sound of hammers and welding torches humming like background music to my own comeback story. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's building something so solid and successful that everyone who disrespected you gets reduced to a footnote. A lesson, a memory that only makes the win taste better. I looked out at the workshop, the smell of metal and sweat and pride mingling in the air, and I couldn't help but smile. Yeah, I was doing just fine. That's the end of today's story. If you haven't yet, please like the video, subscribe, and turn on the bell. What are your thoughts? Share them in the comments. We read them all. And thanks for watching. You're always welcome here.